In Afghanistan, when we wiped the oppressor straight off the land.
The face is startling, the accent American.
So the only reason we're staying here, away from our families, away from the cities, away from, ice, candy bars, all these other things, is because we're waiting to meet with the enemy.
His enemies are many. Anyone who doesn't share his radical views of Islam. He calls himself Abu Mansur al-Amriki. And if seeing this American isn't jarring enough, listen to this.
Bomb by a bomb, blast by a blast, only gonna bring back the glorious past. Mortar by mortar, shell by shell, only gonna stop when I send them to hell.
In this slick, rat-tracked video from last year, al-Amriki, a nom de guerre meaning the American, is leading a tiny ragtag band of foreign fighters, allies of al-qaeda fighting in Somalia. Intelligence officials won't say where in America he's from or who exactly he is.
Land by land, war by war, only gonna make our black flag soar.
Al-Amriki hypes their impending ambush of Ethiopian troops who, with US support, enters Somalia to overthrow Islamic radicals.
So what we're planning to do is put them in an ambush, try to blow up as many of their vehicles as we can, and kill as many of them as we can and take everything they got, honey, inshallah.
Al-Amriki ends up running away. 2 fighters are killed, but this propaganda video has one purpose: recruit more fighters.
We're calling all the brothers overseas, all the Shabab, wherever they are, to come and live the life of a mujahid.
Paul Edel, who studied al-Qaeda for years, says it's the most sophisticated al-Qaeda recruitment video he's seen.
It's what anybody of that age group would be using to make an appealing package to glamorize what they're doing, whether what they're doing is starting a small indie band or planning death and destruction in East Africa.
Fine with his life, everything that he owns.
Almost all the video is in English. Al-Amriki is calling followers to come fight in Africa. But could some of them return home, indoctrinated, trained and ready to fight?
I think for the moment they're focused pretty much exclusively on what is happening in Somalia. But those are concerns, and obviously U.S. security authorities are paying very close attention to that.
And from the east to the west, the heads gonna span.
Word by word, Bush said it true. You with them or you with the Muslim group.
Gone are the days when al-Qaeda's Puritanism banned song. Now they need fighters, whatever their background and wherever they're from. Nick Robertson, CNN, London.
Well, it's that sort of message that has Somalia's president urging Somali Americans not to return, simply to add to the violence. And this is what he's talking about. Check out this video exclusive to CNN. Rebels fighting to oust Somalia's transitional government. It's a sort of chaos seen with little interruption since the early 1990s. The French Foreign Ministry says kidnappers snatched 2 French advisors who, ironically, were there to help the Somali government with security. Eyewitnesses say gunmen stormed the hotel where the few foreigners brave enough to be in Mogadishu tend to stay.
I was in the hotel during the abduction. I could see Somali gunmen pointing guns at 2 white foreigners. They put them on a pickup truck and people say they disappeared. The foreigners told the owners of the hotel that they were journalists and their nationality was French. But later we heard they were military experts and the reason they came here was to train government forces.
So clearly the outside world has an interest in keeping young men from waging jihad in Somalia. The problem is efforts to support what passes for a government there may be backfiring. Emira Woods is co-director of Foreign Policy and Focus at the Institute for Policy Studies. She specialises in Africa and the developing world. Thank you for joining us. First of all, what do you think it is within these young Somali Americans who are more American, from what we can understand, than Somali? What is it within them that is attracting them to go to Somalia and get involved in those gruesome scenes that we saw in that video?
Well, I think clearly it's an issue of national pride. What you see is Somalis responding first to a sense that their land is being taken over with the proxy war from the US and European ground forces that essentially ousted a government, the only government that had brought stability to Somalia since the early 1990s. That government in place from June 2006 was ousted in December 2006 with US airstrikes and Ethiopian ground forces. I think there's a sense among Somalis that injustice has been done and that they need to help to regain control of their country. I think what you see happening on the US end is also a sense of Somalis and other immigrants in Minnesota wanting to gain a foothold in the political process here in the US as well. So there's a sense that they are coming to terms with what it means to be Somalis in America, to be immigrants in America, but also to have access to the American political process. And so you see really both in the country of origin and also here in the United States an expansion of a quest for people to really participate in determining their future and in participating in processes that affect their lives.
The concern is that some of these young Somali Americans don't fully understand the actual situation, what's unfolding in their homeland as they see it. Just take us through who's fighting there in very simple terms and who's winning.
Well, it's difficult to put it in such simple terms, but clearly what happened throughout the Cold War, Somalia is seen as a geostrategic place because it is situated on the Gulf of Aden. It is that vital Gulf that actually controls much of the trade that's coming, whether it's oil and other trade from the Middle East to the U.S. So control of Somalia has always been key throughout the Cold War and until today. And I think what many see is that really the U.S. in particular took turns with the USSR during the Cold War, funneling arms to Somalia, creating really a country that was unmanageable and remains that way today. And just this May 2009, the Obama administration actually signed new agreements to give additional weapons, $10 million in weapons, to this government that many see as being imposed from the outside. But essentially the U.S. picking sides, even with an Obama administration, picking sides and Somalis say potentially picking the wrong side. And so what you have is really a quest for power, a quest for influence from those who want to be a part of determining the future of their country. And there is a battle going on clearly between the forces that supported the Union of Islamic Courts, that thought that for that 6-month period, it was a period of calm, people could send their children to school, women could walk in the streets freely, and yet that government was ousted, and many see as, now taken over by external actors, long-time rivals across the border in Ethiopia, coupled with the U.S. Support financially and militarily, really taking power away from Somalis themselves.
One last point before we let you go. A lot of people concerned about al-Shabaab and how it's tied into the wider al-qaeda network. Could you give some insight into that? And should we be worried about that group growing beyond its borders and having a wider impact on the wider world?
Well, many Somalis will tell you that actually the Union of Islamic Courts was not seen as extremist, was not seen as linked to al-Qaeda, and that actually what has happened since their ouster is growing anti-American sentiment in Somalia. Anti-American sentiment that's not only because of the airstrikes from the U.S. and the support to the Ethiopians, but also a sense that the U.S. has played a role with the Europeans in the offshore, particularly the dumping of toxic wastes, the illegal fishing that goes on offshore in Somalia. So there's a sense that, the interests of the Somali people will only be determined if the Somalis themselves can regain a sense of their own destiny, can regain their true sovereignty.
Emira Woods, thank you so much. Fascinating insight to that story. Thank you.